Welcome to Data Ethics webinar presentation on best practices in the verification of data. While this webinar will be focused on how schools can go about the process of verification of data, there certainly are suggestions that can be applied to both small businesses and not-for-profit organizations. This informational webinar will outline considerations your team can use in your data verification process. This webinar will be structured in two parts. The first part will be a 10-minute overview of the verification checklist, followed by a 20-minute question and answer period. The first part of this webinar will be recorded and posted. No identifiable information regarding the participants of the webinar will be included in the recording. I'd like to just take a second to say hello and thank you for joining. My name is Brandon Caveney. I'm the Principal Consultant and founder of Data Ethics LLC. The checklist that is discussed in today's webinar can be found within this meeting room. For those who are watching the recorded version of this webinar, you can find a copy of this checklist on the same site where this webinar has been posted on our resource page, www.dataethics.net/resources. This link will also be included in the last slide of this presentation, along with contact information. Also on the resources page is a link to our Contact Us page, where you can sign up to receive alerts about upcoming webinars and other information that may be a resource. Also available on our resources page is the checklist and the webinar that we conducted back in May regarding end-of-year processing for schools and school districts to complete their data year that would have ended typically at the end of June. We will now begin to look at each of the components of the checklist. Unlike our other webinars today, I will be reading some of the content off the slides to assist in the reflection process, as many of the items on today's checklist are in question format. Please note that given organizations are unique, this list is to be used as a guide for beginning a dialogue with your team and highlight best practices. It is very important to empower a team of people to drive a verification process. This checklist is to be used as a tool to help structure a process that is missing or help refine and augment a process that is already in existence. It is not meant to be an exhaustive listing, as there will be steps that should be included that would be specific to your school's information management process. After the introduction, the checklist is divided into three parts that help focus team members who would be participating in the data verification process. The first section, General Considerations, highlights components that would be helpful in any verification process. These include making sure that the purpose of the verification process is stated, thinking about what type of data is verified. Is it a qualitative data or quantitative? That you've formed a team, and thinking about the talent that's on that team, making sure it's balanced, and allowing time for sufficient review of the information to be verified. Have business rules available so that the data that's been collected can be cross-checked against what was intended to be collected. Use a 3-person verification rule so that there is a consensus process regarding the verification, especially when changes need to be made such that discussions can occur and that there isn't unilateral decisions that are being made to change data. Implement a sign-off process. It would be great to have the 3 individuals who verified sign off. Additionally, at the building level, when a school certifying that their information is correct, that the principal would be signing off, indicating an official authorization that the data is correct or needs to be changed in certain ways. Document changes made during a verification process, so if errors are found or omissions are found and things need to be added to the data set, there is documentation to what needs to occur and that the documentation supports the change. And also create action items along the way so that data teams can use these action items to strengthen the data governance process. So for example, let's go to the bullet right up here. When you're talking about documented changes during a verification process, if you are continuously finding as you're verifying sets of data that there is a continual error or omission, that could be something that could be incorporated back into the business rules to streamline and make it more efficient the next time the data is collected, such that that omission or that error that is common throughout does not occur again. We will now move from general considerations to considerations for a data analyst. And a data analyst, for the purposes of this presentation, is defined as anyone involved in the creation of the data set that's being verified. And there are several questions to think about, and it's really getting at the who and where the data is coming from and who is involved in the creation of the data set, and ensuring that it is the most timely data that's available. So you're looking at file creation, where the source came, making sure it came from the original system of record is the most optimal position to be in. How many times has the file been touched? Is there documentation to the fact that any changes were made to the file that would impact the data that is being verified? And what are the column types and what are the dimensions of the file? So what type of data are you dealing with? How large is the data set that you're dealing with? These all will definitely come into play during the verification process and give you an idea for how long that data process may take. Also looking at, getting more to the specifics of the data file, what are the primary keys for the file? Are they the key fields represented just once in the file, or are there duplicates? So especially when you're thinking about student data, you really want to have a flat file as much as possible so you don't have duplicates, so that everything is by student ID once and everything is flat across the columns. If there are duplicates, thinking about where those duplicates are occurring and what is causing that, and whether or not you should reorganize the file to better format it for analysis, and making sure that the file has an accompanying data dictionary so that you know exactly what each of the data attributes are in the file, so that when it comes to making decisions pertaining to duplicates or making sure that the data is populating correctly, it matches what was intended to be collected. So a couple of other things when you're thinking about summary data files, so moving from the student item level or the individual item level to summary files, what sources of the data were used to make the summary file? Are all the data elements included in the summary file from the same period? So if certain data is older than others, why is that the case? So if you've got something from one school year included with another school year, was that intended? Making sure that there's a complete, clear understanding of the time period for which the data is represented. Also think about are there footnotes to the data summary file that account for questions the reader may have, so that things are explained and it's easier for the reader to understand? Or business rules used to create the summary file automated, such that the file was a product of an automated report? Or are people involved in the process? That will have a definite effect on how you're verifying this information. More than likely, if it's automated, it's been verified, and then periodically you're continuing to verify the accuracy of that automated process. Have processes that the summary files dependent on been vetted for accuracy. So getting at basically what I was saying before. This last section of our webinar will look at two main verification activities that a school or district administrator may be involved with. One being the verifying of data in student management systems, and the second being the verifying of data in state reports. So first, when we look at the verification in student management systems, the school administrator really needs to focus on facilitating a process that empowers those who are inputting data and verifying data the time to handle the volumes of data that they're responsible for. So establishing things that are a continuous process, checking protocols for how data is entered, doing regular reports to seeing that data is valid and has been entered correctly, and that there are processes for handling data errors. When it comes to verifying information in state reports, you want to run similar verification reports in the student management system. Oftentimes, throughout my experience, principals will say, well, the data is in the student management system, that's how it got to the state. But it goes through so many processes in getting to the state that you want to make sure that there's a match. So that's a first place to start. And then use other resources that are outside of the student management system. Often people have additional data tracking processes that they've implemented at the classroom level or within the building level that helps align best to the culture and operation that the school has. So those additional data sources may be helpful in the verification process as well. The bottom line is the better you know your students, the easier it is to verify the data. After the verification of information that are in state reports, making sure that there's a sign-off, that you're providing the authorization that the data is correct as is reflected or is in need of alteration, that it does not accurately reflect, and then documenting what is not accurate. Make sure that you're using previous versions of reports to see if there are any large changes over the last time the same data was reported. Oftentimes this is called a reasonability check, so that gives you an idea for the consistency of the data that's been reported. All right, well, this ends the presentation portion of the webinar. We're going to move into the question and answer portion next. Before we end the recording, just wanted to go over our contact information. Feel free to check out our website at dataethics.net. Specifically, the resources page will contain this archived webinar once it's posted, and has other resources on there for your use. Feel free to give us a call with any questions. We'd be happy to talk with you, and or send us an email at accountability@dataethics.net. Again, we're willing to engage in any conversations pertaining to data governance, analytics, data privacy, and the development of data teams. And if there are other questions you may have regarding data that don't necessarily fit into those areas, we can certainly help identify resources to point you in a direction to get the expertise that you're looking for. All right, so this time we're going to conclude the recording portion, and we're going to move into your questions. Thank you very much for participating.